The views and opinions expressed by the individuals in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Metaphor Creative Media, its parent, or its affiliates.
As police officers, we're witness to some of the most amazing things in life. Some comical, some horrendous, and some just plain miraculous. When asked why you went into law enforcement, most officers will tell you, because it's like having a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. Today, we saved you a front row seat. This is Cobservations.
From Broadcast Beat Studios in Oakland Park, Florida, Metaphor Creative Media presents a show that gives you a personal glimpse of what law enforcement officers see and do in their typical and not so typical day of work. From walking the beat to detective, Rob has 35 years of law enforcement experience. Although the staff are all active or former law enforcement, any views, opinions, and all other show content are in no way official views, statements, or policies of any law enforcement agency. To talk to our hosts, call the podcast studio at area code 954-210-5413. That's 954-210-5413.
Hello again, and welcome to Cobservations, your front row seat to the greatest show on earth. I'm Rob Lerner, your host. We broadcast live every Thursday night at 7 p.m. from the Broadcast Beat Studios located in Oakland Park, Florida. If you have any questions, comments, or a story you'd like to share, you can join in on the conversation by giving the podcast studio a call at 888-511-COPS. That's 888-511-2677. You can also instant message your questions and comments on our Facebook page. Here on Cobservations, we attempt to give you a personal glimpse of what law enforcement officers do on a daily basis. We also talk about recent events, happenings, and the latest hot topics pertaining to law enforcement that not only affect officers, but you, the general public, as well. We usually end our show with a tribute to our fallen brothers and sisters, which we will. However, in addition to that, today we have one that hits close to home. Palm Beach County Sheriff's Deputy James Dickinson, who was killed in the line of duty on this date in 1989, while serving a court-ordered Myers Act on a Vietnam veteran. Jimmy had dispatch make contact with the man, asking him to come out to speak to him. The last thing he told the dispatcher was, "Your deputy is dead." He then shot Jimmy with a high-powered rifle, killing him. The suspect was arrested, but eventually released after only 12 years. He died in 2003. Jimmy is the brother of my good friend and our first guest, Gary Dickinson. Our prayers are with the Dickinson family. Last week, my guest John and I continued a conversation regarding active shooters and made suggestions on what you should do if you find yourself in such a situation. Most importantly, to be aware of your surroundings. Have a plan, run, hide, and fight. We also informed you of some recent scams. The IRS scam and the Equifax breach. To find out if you were a victim of the Equifax breach, I recommend you go to ftc.gov/Equifax, where you can see if you were the victim of that. Okay. We're also going to, the scam segment went very well last week, and we're going to continue on that. But before we do that, we're going to talk on the recent attacks that happened with the police and police suicides as well. We're going to start talking about some recent stories that were in the news. Okay, we're going to talk about the Police Commissioner James O'Neill's firing of NYPD Officer Daniel Pantaleo for the death of Eric Garner. Also in Atlanta, Georgia, police in Georgia have arrested a pair of brothers accused of paying another man cash and cocaine to throw a firebomb through the window of an Atlanta police officer's home. We're also going to touch on Hicksville, Long Island, where a man posing as a police officer found out that role reversal may not have been his best move after he was busted attempting to pull over some real detectives on Friday morning. But before we get into those stories, my guest tonight is a highly decorated retired police officer of the New York City Police Department and Papa Counselor, Dean Swade. Dean, I'd like to welcome you to the show.
Thanks so much, Rob. Glad to be here.
Thank you for coming. And for those of you who are not familiar with PAPA, it's the acronym for Support Organization Providing Peer Assistance. Dean, as I ask all my guests, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions to get some background.
Sure.
Why did you go into law enforcement?
Oh, it's funny that when I was a young guy just coming out of high school, my first job was working for a factoring company, which is accounts receivable. And I sat behind a desk and I never got to interact with people, and to me it was just very boring as a young guy. So I started to take all these tests, the tests for the state troopers I took the fire department test, I took the NYPD test. And when I was 20 years old, I got called, actually I was 19 years old, I got called by the New York State Troopers. And at 19, I didn't want to go live up in the barracks in upstate New York in the freezing cold, so I decided not to take it. A few months later, I got called by the NYPD, and I joined when I was just shy of my 21st birthday. Something I wanted to try. I didn't know if it was for me. I'm the only person in my immediate family that went into law enforcement. I didn't follow in anybody's footsteps, so I joined. Went to the academy in 1986, December of 1986, and I just loved it right from the beginning. It was just for me. I grew up in Queens, in New York, and when I was first came out of the academy, they sent us all to Harlem, and it was a little bit of a culture shock. I went to Harlem, when I was a young guy, but to spend time there and see how it really was an eye opener. I did my training there for 6 months, and then went to the South Bronx, which was even more of an eye opener. I remember going there, to look for car parts in the junkyards and stuff like that. But when you start to work there and see how the people live it and stuff like that, at that time it was the crime was very high. There was a lot of things I saw there that I never saw before. So I liked the job. I liked the camaraderie of the police that I worked with, and I'd say I've been involved in quite a few things in a short amount of time. I was involved in 3 shootings in the first 10 years I was on the job. I made a lot of arrests. I've saved a lot of people's lives, and I never regret 1 minute of it. I would do it all over again.
And what did you like the most about your law enforcement career?
Just what I really liked and why I really wanted to become cop is to help people. A lot of people think that cops want to go out there and write summonses and lock people up, and it's like us against them. I got the most satisfaction out of if I would catch a robber that robbed somebody and get the victim's property back and see the bad guy go to jail. That was the best thing for me, and the person was very appreciative to get their stuff back and see a criminal that wronged them go to jail. Everybody, I'm sure, had the feeling of getting a car stolen, coming out, looking at your empty spot, and get that sinking feeling in your heart. That's happened to me too. I used to love to get people's cars back for them, and it was the best phone call I could make was say, "Hey, I recovered your car. We have it here and still in good shape," and they wanted it back. So those things I like to do. I like to help people.
So you like seeing a happy conclusion.
I did. And there's things in there that in police work where, you deal with a lot of, we used to call them EDPs, mostly it's third person. There's things you have to deal with like that. That's not fun. But that's part of police work. Even the traffic summonses. Nobody likes to give somebody who's a decent person who's made a small mistake a summons, but they're done for a reason. Sometimes people don't realize that going through red lights is dangerous, or not having equipment is dangerous, and you're really helping them in a way that they don't even realize. A lot of people take it very personally, and it's not. We don't go out there to do these things personally to people.
No, nobody I know ever got up in the morning and said, "Hey, I'm going to write summonses. I'm going to."
Yeah, well, there are guys who are in summons details, and that's what they had to do. That wasn't my thing. I didn't like to do that. I want to become a cop to fight crime. But if you really do that, gung ho, you could get burnt out very easily. So I tried to gauge myself, and it never really happened for me. I just was the kind of person that couldn't stay out of trouble.
Gotcha. Dean, I know you're a highly decorated police officer and received the NYPD's Battle Cross.
Yeah,
The
a Combat Cross.
Combat Cross,
Mm-hmm.
Combat Cross, the Medal of Valor, and the Purple Heart. People don't know the Battle Cross is awarded to officers who performed an extraordinary act of heroism while engaged in personal combat with an adversary. Pretty much no regard for your own safety.
Yeah, well, I was involved in 3 shootings when I was a cop. I was shot once, and that was the incident where I got the Combat Cross for.
We'll get into that. I just want to touch on some of these
Okay.
medals. The Medal of Valor is, I believe, it's the third highest
That's
medal,
the 3rd highest medal, yeah.
and that's for outstanding personal bravery. Also in the line of duty, imminent danger to yourself.
Yeah, and these are things that we just do and don't think about. You do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Purple Heart for being
Purple
injured
Heart.
in the line of duty.
Yeah, that's for, a bad injury, which I overcame pretty good, I
So-
think.
And I'd also like to discuss your career with Papa. But before we do that, as I always discuss the matters in the news, I'd like to go over some of that. The stories that I mentioned recently. It was recently released this week that the NYPD fired Officer Eric Pantaleo, Daniel Pantaleo, for the choking of Mr. Garner. Police Commissioner James O'Neill announced Monday, that he fired the officer based on recent recommendation of a department disciplinary judge. Pantaleo is the officer who was recorded on video wrestling with Eric Garner and putting him in a chokehold. Garner's last dying words were, I can't breathe, and it became a flashpoint for a national debate over race and the use of force.
Well, when you work in some of these areas there, it was hard to find sometimes people that were white. I worked in the South Bronx. Everybody was either Hispanic or black. So it wasn't like people go out and look for people of color to do things to. But, with this specific case, though, he was cleared by a grand jury.
And the Department of Justice.
And they've went over these tapes frame by frame by frame, and when EMS came, which it took a long time for EMS to come to the scene, he was actually still breathing. So
Right.
he was not choked to death like people would are picturing it as.
No, and if you look at the video, Garner was a huge man.
Yeah, he was a 300-pound guy.
Yeah, 300 plus, and Officer Pantaleo, when he came up around him, when he originally grabbed him to hold, he came underneath, from underneath. He had one arm coming under his arm, the other one coming over his head. Took him to the ground, and at some point it appears to be a choke, but it doesn't appear to be lasting very long, and they subdue him and they arrest him. But the key to this whole thing is compliance. And we talk about it all the time, and we preach compliance all the time. If he just would have went with the program.
Right. Nobody wants to die over selling Lucy's, and I'm sure these cops are out there and that don't want to have to fight with people on the ground over something like this either. So it's just an unfortunate thing. They tried to get control of him. They almost went through a plate glass window. His arm was across his front of his head area. We're trained to grab people's heads to control their bodies. And just the way that he was falling back, he was holding on that way, and it's just a matter of a few seconds. So it's a tragedy, but it's something that I feel that it's wrong that he was fired over.
Look, it's a tragedy all the way around. Years ago, when I was in the academy, they had taught us the carotid artery chokehold with a nightstick. Okay, and that entailed coming up behind somebody and getting the nightstick on the side of their neck, and with both hands you would crank down on it. It would cut off the blood supply. And that was, eventually we were told, no more, you can't do it anymore. The difference with this, with the chokehold, you're physically going hands-on. When you're trying to subdue somebody and get them down, the last thing you're thinking about is where are my arms, where are my hands? You're just thinking about getting him down and effecting the arrest. And basically, you're trying to use the minimum amount of force necessary to effect that arrest. And unfortunately, because of his size, it took several officers to actually get him down and handcuff him. And
Yeah, that's the way sometimes that it is. That's when people don't comply. What are you supposed to do? It escalates and it escalates. Usually the cops are trained not to back off. When you're going to be arrested, they're going to follow through till that happens.
you have to, because if we backed off every time somebody decided they weren't going
Yeah,
to jail
and
and they were
sometimes-
arrested,
Sometimes it gets very involved, chases. It's some things go way farther than they ever have to, and that's just part of police work.
absolutely. The sad thing is this was a 5-year investigation that came to this conclusion. Officer Pantaleo has I believe, a newborn, a house and a mortgage. And I know there's a GoFundMe page that was set up for him, for people that want to support him and help him through this rough time. And there'll be legal battles that go on. I'm sure the firing is going to be appealed. And hopefully it'll have a happy conclusion for him, because, like I said, this could happen to any one of us at any given time.
Absolutely, he was just doing his job, and now if you think about it, are other cops going to be hesitant to put their hands on people and possibly get hurt?
Well, it's a good point, because basically they're being told, the police in New York, hey, call a supervisor for everything.
Yeah, follow the procedures to the letter.
Exactly.
And then sometimes, is it really possible to do that? I mean, if you're walking down the street, someone pulls a gun out on you, you're gonna jump on them or take action as fast as you possibly can. There's just not enough time for all these things. Maybe with something with the loosies affecting an arrest for something like that. But what about something that happens very, very quickly? You're going to have to make a decision. Hopefully, if you hesitate, you're putting your life in danger.
Absolutely. And the job at the end of the day is to go home.
That's it. I agree.
Yeah. Another story coming out of Atlanta. Police in Georgia have arrested a pair of brothers accused of paying another man in cash and cocaine to throw a firebomb through the window of an Atlanta police officer's home. News outlets report that the arrest of two brothers were announced on Thursday. The Major O'Connor said the brothers paid a man $50 in cash and $100 worth of cocaine to set the fire on June 26th. The officer wasn't home at the time. And the reason for this is the drug dealers lived on the block, and they didn't want a police officer living on the block. It's just another example of what people think they can get away with when it comes to our police officers.
Yes. Well, this is, it all, this all stems from minor things, that what they could think they could get away with. And it's a horrible situation.
And it also starts with water.
The water.
It all started with water, and it escalates, and people see this on the news, and they see people getting away with it, and it emboldens them.
I really believe that it all started when they started the humanizing the badge campaign, where they had cops dancing and all this stuff. And I was when I worked in the South Bronx, there were some people there that grew up poor, and we had a rapport with the people there. They respected the police. Now this respect is lost. I mean, to pour water, in my days of being a police officer, I'm sure yours too, that was unheard of.
Absolutely.
Absolutely unheard of. It's not like we were, mean to people or threatened people. It's just that respect was there. Me as a regular civilian walking around in plain clothes, having nothing to do with being a police officer, wouldn't let somebody come and dump water on me.
No.
It's just how you treat other people.
Absolutely. And if any of these politicians, some of them are saying, well, it's hot out and it's only water. But if you stood outside the offices of one of these politicians, and as they came walking out in their $1,000 suit, if you dumped a bucket of water on them,
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
think
sure
they would
they
say,
wouldn't be happy.
At that point, it's not just water. Oh, it's hot. It's refreshing.
And it's not only that. These police are wearing vests. They have equipment. Their guns could get damaged. You get ammo is wet. It's not something that you want to get wet on purpose. So it's very disrespectful. And where does it go from there? First, you're getting water dumped on you. What's next? To be slapped or punched, then shot at, which has been happened not too long ago in Brooklyn. There, will shoot at the police. So the respect. Hopefully, they could get it back. Now it's out that if you do this, you'll be arrested. It should have been right from the beginning. I don't know what they had told or taught these police that. Just to see them walk away and do nothing, it was heartbreaking to me.
Very much. I felt bad for them in one sense. In another sense, it was it just disgusted me to see them walk away.
I mean, I was trained, that if that happens, there's a multitude of things going on there. You're being disorderly conduct. It's an assault. There's things that they could be arrested for, not just to ignore it. You wouldn't walk away if somebody slapped you in the face. And then it goes into, how do you know that it is water? You don't know what it could be. That would be the next thing. Someone's going to get a face full of a cup of acid in their face.
And it's happened back in the 70s, I think, or the 60s. Lye was a big issue. They would cook up the lye and they would throw it in an officer's face. Then on a lighter note, out of Hicksville, Long Island, they arrested a man who was posing as a police officer. And what he did was he pulled over a van that was occupied by two detectives from a communications electronics squad. The suspect was driving a Nissan Sentra that was decked out with lights and sirens and attempted to pull the van over. When the van stopped and the detectives jumped out and identified themselves, he took off. It's pretty funny. I had an incident with that when I was in anti-crime back in 1988. Some of the guys I worked with, they were driving an unmarked car, and for whatever reason, they had taken a light, and they got pulled over by a Chevy Monte Carlo. The guy had a bubble, and he pulled him over, going through the red light, and asked for license, registration, and insurance. And when he flashed his badge, it was a Department of Corrections badge, and they engaged him and questioned him, and he had a loaded .357 Magnum on the front seat of the car. And it's funny when police impersonators try to pull over the regular police officers. It's got a comical ending. He was in custody pending charges on police impersonation, reckless endangerment, and unlawful fleeing from a police officer.
Well, it's great when they get caught, but just think how many times that happens where people don't report it, and I think that it's the real police doing something underhanded to them,
Oh, I've had it years ago, trying to pull people over in an unmarked car with the lights going. They refuse to pull over, and then finally they pull into a gas station, and they say, hey, I didn't know who you are. And it's legitimate, and I tell everybody out there, if you're getting pulled over by an unmarked car and you don't feel safe, don't flee. Get on the phone. Get on the phone. You can call 911 yourself and let them know what's going on, or pull into the nearest gas station where it's safe, where there are people around.
Yeah, that's a smart thing to do.
So, I'd like to remind people, if you have a question or a comment or a story you'd like to share, you can join the conversation by giving the podcast studio a call toll-free at 888-511-COPS. That's 888-511-2677. You can also instant message your questions and comments on your Facebook page. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Dean.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him. Hi, I'm a warning sign. I let people know when they're... Oh, gotta go.
I'll be right back.
Hi.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Is the seat supposed to be forward-facing or rear-facing? Did they move to a booster seat too soon? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Don't think you know. Know you know.
We've got a call on the line, so let's answer it and say hello.
Just calling in.
Hey, hello, you're on the air with Observations. Who's this?
Good evening, guys. This is Rich. I'm calling to say that we're enjoying the podcast and that Dean is a good friend and a true gentleman and a good man.
Yeah, yes, he is. This is my, before we came on, I was on the phone with him for about an hour before we set this up, and very impressive to speak to.
Yeah, Rich is actually a good friend of mine. He's in the one I was telling you has his radio station, Rollback Radio, rollbackradio.com, and does a great job every morning playing the oldies.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, and I know that he's basically talking about all his police work, and listen, everything you say is true about the lack of respect for our officers today is astounding, and it comes from a lack of leadership in the home, and in many cases it comes from a lack of leadership in our community, and it's really a sad thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a start of it. And like, I don't know if you heard me speak about how the police have done it with the dancing challenges and stuff like that, and the respect has changed. I know the cops want to connect with the community, but there's different ways to do it. That to me is not humanizing the badge. It's kind of lost the respect, and they see that and they take advantage of it. Also combined with not getting attention at home, and there's so many single parents now. There's a lot less father figures, and that all contributes to it.
I agree with you, and our media doesn't exactly help the cause in many instances as well.
Yep, no, that is true. Hopefully we can change things around, and when they start to prosecute for doing these things like throwing water on police and stuff like that, or jumping over police cars. I saw a video the other day in NYPD where they danced across a hood of a car, and the cops didn't even get out of the car and just drove away.
Right.
That's I could see their point, that if they don't want to get involved in doing something like that, but you're only feeding the fire. You have to stop it now. That's my opinion.
Well, we can only hope. I worked in the Broward school system for 30 years, and every one of our schools in Broward County have a resource officer. And I don't know if that's the case all over the country, but one would hope that when children interact with police officers and can respect the badge at school, then they can certainly try and respect the badge after hours. And I think that goes a long way. But it all starts at home. And I admire you, my friend. You're a good man, and I know that you're not the type of person that would just want attention and everything, but I admire you being on this show tonight and everything you'll do for children all the time with your birds and such. You're a good man and a very good friend.
Thank you, Rich.
Rich, thanks for calling in. You have yourself a great night.
Thank you.
You know, Dan, getting back to Papa, alarms went out to the New York City Police Department in 1995 after 26 police officers committed suicide within 2 years, and mental health services were not meeting the needs of cops in crisis. In 1996, Papa opened up its doors with a pledge to all New York City police officers of all ranks to help them, that the be help available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to help you with personal and professional problems. And it was the peer support services that was given by fellow workers, people that have walked the walk, talked the talk, knew what other officers were going through. You know, everything was confidential, and it helps not only save an officer's family and relationships and careers, but more importantly, lives.
Absolutely.
You know, when did you get involved?
When I retired in 1997, I think I filled out an application to see if I would be interested, and they didn't get around to contact me until 2007. I heard he was down in Florida, but I said I would. I talked to them a little bit on the phone, and I had a conference with them and told them a little about my history. And of course, they knew from, they looked up my record and said, "Well, you would be involved in quite a few things." And I said, "Yes," and I said, "I absolutely would be interested in doing this." So I actually flew back to New York to Staten Island and went on a 3-day retreat and went through their 3-day course of training. And so I've been doing this now for 12 years. And excellent training, a lot of common sense things, to go through a lot of things on the job, to see deaths, in car accidents and children killed and people be beaten, stuff like that. It definitely builds up with you. I was involved in three shootings, 2 deaths. Did I have post-traumatic stress sometime in my life? Probably. Did I feel it, or did it affect me? Not. I really don't feel it in a big way. But I says, listen, if I do this and I can help one person, one cop, I will do it. So that's how I got involved.
It's funny. I'd heard it, somebody else speaking, believe it or not, was from I believe, a different podcast. But the analogy was, when you start this job, they give you a backpack. And with every job you respond to and everything you see, you pick up a pebble. And some pebbles are bigger than others. Some are rocks and some are boulders. And you keep putting these pebbles and rocks into your backpack over the years, and you never know when that backpack is going to break.
That's it. You carry the baggage, and everybody manifests it differently. Some people have an outlet. Some things are positive, some things are negative. How many cops become drinkers, drugs, failed marriages, stuff like that. That's where it works out. Thank God for me, everything worked out in a positive way, and I try to make everything positive and turn into helping other people and getting positive hobbies for myself that got me not thinking about bad things, and it just worked out good for me.
Because statistically, police officers, people in the law profession, there's a higher rate of alcoholism, divorce, and suicide.
Absolutely. And a lot of the problems that I was involved with, the people that reached out through Papa that I went and spoke to, really didn't have to do with them. It had to do with other things going on in their life. Children, mainly children, and other, their relationships with a spouse. That's what, and those things can lead people to want to hurt themselves. So, and besides, of course, stopping a suicide, we would get them the help that they needed for their other things. Get them the referrals for help, for counseling, if it was alcoholism or marital problems, and get them pointed in the right direction to fix all that. And it was, so far, everything that I was involved in turned out very well.
Thank God. I notice also that you have a shirt that says "Brothers Before Others."
Yeah, Brothers Before Others, organizations that I joined in 2014. They do a lot of charity work. They build a brother and sisterhood for law enforcement across this whole country. There are even members that are international. It's a great. In the 5 years it's been in existence, they have done so much good and raised so much funds for flowers go out to every officer's line of duty death. They support the Walk to Remember, the Tunnel to Towers. They donate a lot of funds, and if officers need support and their families, they've done plenty of outreach for that also. So I've made a lot of good friends through it. A lot of law enforcement is a tight community. I always was taught that we have each other's backs, and that's where it starts.
Yeah, they always said if we don't take care of our own, who will?
Yeah.
Dean, I'd like to talk more about your career, a very notable career. Statistically, most police officers throughout their 20 years or 30-year careers only fire their guns on the range. By all accounts, you are not most police officers.
No, I guess not. Yeah, I had 3 incidences pretty close in time. One was in 1994. One was in 1995, and then 1996. 3 years in a row.
It was a trifecta.
Yeah.
So the Battle Cross, when you receive the Battle Cross, and that's I believe that's the second highest award.
The second highest award that you can get from the police department is the Combat Cross. Yeah, and it's not something you could put in for yourself. You have to be put in by others in the police department.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second, because when you say it's not something you can put in for yourself, throughout my career I've seen police officers that had medals that went from the top of the badge. They needed popsicle sticks to hold them up, and if you were a good rider, a lot of these medals were gotten because you were riding. Guys would have to write up some of their own medals.
Yes, yeah. I've wrote up some of my some of my medals, but the lower medals, EPDs,
Right.
Excellent Police Duties,
Right, meritorious.
or meritorious, you would. Commendations usually go. You could write them up, but if they go for a board, they'll get knocked down.
Let me interject with the board. As a detective in New York, I had to sit on one of the medal boards, and I found sitting on the boards, if the board members that were on the board, if they happened to like the police officer that put in for the medal, they would approve it. And if they didn't like the officer, they would deny it. And in one such incident, there was 2 police officers made a gun arrest. And it was based on a radio, on a description, a detailed description of the perpetrator, and it was non-eventful. Okay, they made the arrest, and they awarded them a commendation. And there was another police officer in the precinct who was very active and very outspoken, and a few people, I guess he rubbed a few people the wrong way, made a gun arrest, and there were shots fired, and they were putting him, I guess they put him for an accommodation as well. It wasn't a battle course, they put him for accommodation, and they denied him. I said, wait a second, you're giving these people a medal for a gun arrest that was thank God it was non-eventful, and you're denying somebody else who's actually involved. There were shots fired, and you're denying him.
No, yeah, it was very common. Actually, I wasn't really surprised, but my incident really is the definition of what a combat cross is. If you look at it,
Tell us about it.
Because I'll tell you the whole story of the incident, and it really, the whole thing was one of these things where the shooting didn't have actually anything to do with what I was doing at the moment. It was just a surprise thing that happened. I was on an observation post doing like a SNU operation, which is buy and bust of drugs in the street,
Right,
in the Hunts Point area.
Say Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit.
Yeah, like that. And I was working in Bronx Task Force at the time, so I was in the observation role on a rooftop with another officer with me. We were in uniform, and our job was to look out down to the street and identify the buyers and sellers, and our team down there would scoop them up. So a noise happens on the roof that somebody had come up there for whatever reason, and we stopped the male, and he was real nervous when we stopped him, and it turns out, long story short, that we thought he came up there either to go to the bathroom on the roof or do drugs or get high or whatever. And turned out that he had a gun on him. He had a pistol. So somebody was coming up the other stairway on the building, and my partner went to check it out. And when I turned around, I was looking through his pack of cigarettes, and I look up, and he's got a gun pointed right at my face. Immediately grab for the gun, knock it down. I get shot in the leg. I return fire. I shoot 5 times. He drops down, dead on his feet. my partner's 20 feet away from me, comes back, is what happened? Our team heard 6 shots so quickly, didn't even happen in a second, never fell on the ground myself. And the adrenaline, the build-up with like that is like, when you see a gun and you go for it and then you hear a shot, and I didn't really feel pain right away, but I knew that I was hit. And I says, that's it. I have to protect myself from my partner. I says, and I just gave it everything I had. Didn't even look back. I says, I'm going to stop this threat as fast as I can. And I did. And, I would even explain it where the guy was right on top of me, 2 feet away. It's not something that is glory, like they'll put it on TV, have brains splattered on my shirt. It's a horrible thing to go through. But to protect your life and to protect your partner's life, this is something that had to be done. So I don't regret it. I had to, I never had a nightmare about it. To me, it was something that was justified. There was no other way I could get out of it, and I was put in the situation, and thank God that my training followed through. I did what I was supposed to do, and it worked out good for me. Now, the guy wasn't in this country legally. He was only in here for 6 months, and he had a long criminal record.
It's a perfect example in police work where you never know what to expect.
You don't.
Here you're doing an operation, and your attention is focused on one thing. And you have somebody coming up on the roof to do drugs and has absolutely nothing to do with
Talk about surprise.
Absolutely.
I never expected to look up and see a gun pointed at my nose.
No, different story when you're responding to something in progress. You get that radio run.
Yes, you'll have your hand on your gun. You're aware, like something to look for. This was a complete surprise. It would just totally caught me off guard. But thank God that I responded the way I did, and it worked out good for us. But even when the guy's autopsy came back, he was high on every kind of drug that you could possibly think of was in his system. So whatever he was thinking that day, who knows? But that was one of the things that I think I told you the story that shooting wasn't even presented to the grand jury, which is unheard of these days.
Right.
But when all the facts came out, the district attorney didn't want to present it to the grand jury, and they said,
it's open shut.
It was an open and closed case. His family, but they never even contested it or said boo. It just went away.
It's funny. I would imagine that it happened so quickly that you didn't have time to really think or get scared. There are times you go on a run and you start to anticipate.
Well, maybe you build up the adrenaline
Right.
a little bit. I didn't even have any of that at all. When I walked down 6 flights of stairs, and they had a radio car from the 4-1 precinct take me to the Jacoby Hospital, and that's when I was most scared. Because these guys are making turns on 2 wheels. They're like, don't crash. I made it this far. Get me safe to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, that's when I felt the most pain and stuff like that. And I had a bullet go right through my kneecap. It came out right behind my leg. When they took my pants off in the hospital, the bullet fell on the floor flat like a dime.
And that was pretty much the end of your career?
Yeah, pretty much.
Three-quarter pension disability?
Yep. I didn't want to leave the job, but they told me, says, you're never going to walk right again. I walked in here in my own power. I don't use a cane, but I'm not running any marathons. But time healed it pretty good. But this is, over 20 years ago, too. So
it's funny. You didn't want it. You weren't looking for the disability pension. You have so many others that.
Yeah, well, that's a this is funny when you go through it, and you went through the medical system too. That every time I go down to the medical section, they just look at me like I'm a number. They don't know what happened to me. Oh, this guy's got a bum leg. What'd you do? Fall down the stairs in the precinct, or they don't know if you were wounded in a shootout. They don't know.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that. Years ago, I heard a story that there was one of the police officers was trying to get out on 3/4. And they used to have stand-up roll calls. And what he did was from the second floor, he threw himself down a staircase. Okay, rolled down the steps, screaming and banging all the way down. And he lay there for a minute or two and nobody came out. So he peeked through the door, he could see the window, and they were still in formation doing roll call. Nobody heard him, so he went up and did it again.
Well, I remember where they started to go think that you had to get out 3/4, you had to be doing something police, strictly related to police work. Not like if you were changing a flat tire and the thing fell on your toe. You had to be chasing a criminal or doing something police related.
I think it all depends on who you know.
Well, that's another thing too. I think one of the chiefs there went deaf at the Rolling Stones concert, I believe.
Yeah, Chief Johnson. Yeah, pretty funny story. Question, with your experiences through Papa, are there any success stories that you can tell, or any stories without naming anybody?
Sure. No, I actually met with 3 people in person. And what we do as peer support officers is go there and ascertain what the story is, to see if the guy has an alcoholic problem, to see if he's imminently going to hurt himself, is there firearms involved, something like that, just to sort out the story, because there's going to be many different things. So on the few ones that I actually met with people on, the issue wasn't with themselves. I mean, they were distraught and very upset and not imminently going to hurt themselves, but they had problems with their families. One guy in particular was one of his kids had a lot of problems. And we got him the right resources to help that, and that worked out perfect. The guy called me back months later and thanked me, and everything was good with that one. There was another guy that I had called and met with that he was injured in 9/11. He was actually buried in the rubble and got out 3/4 and had some serious injuries, and he got divorced, and his wife pretty much took half of what he had. And he called me where I can hear like he was in a empty house. Like you could hear the sounds that there was nothing. The room was empty. And I met with him, and I says, this life will go on. And he got some help too. So everyone that I was involved with, they all had good endings. There was nothing that couldn't be rectified or taken care of. And that's why I always say that suicide is it's a permanent not a permanent solution to something. There's always something you could do to fix it.
Yeah. Everybody says it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
That's right.
As we're having our discussions in the background of the news, you can see that there's a lot of talk going on about New York with the police department, with the repercussions of Officer Pantaleo being terminated, how it's going to affect law enforcement in the offices, and ultimately the people of the city. Because what's going to happen now is you're going to have police officers that are protecting their jobs.
Yeah. Why? What would make you want to go out and put your hands on somebody?
Yeah. I mean, these guys go out there every day, not knowing if they're coming back home, putting everything on the line, and when they do their job, and hey, sometimes things go bad. There was no intent on Officer Pantaleo. He went out to do a job.
Yeah, he went out to make some arrests on things that they were ordered to go there for. Correct. It was a condition. And
now, ultimately, at this point in time, he's lost everything. At this point, hopefully, they'll sue. He'll get his job back. Like I said, I know there are a lot of support groups out there. Have set up GoFundMe pages for him to help.
I don't know if you watched today that they had the SBA representative speak today, and the sergeant that was there got a 20-day
suspension.
Lost 20 vacation days.
Right.
And they would have went after her job too, but the time had run by. They have, I think, 18 months to start something, and it's been 5 years. So she just didn't contest her 20-day suspension or vacation days she lose, and then her job is safe. So she didn't contest it, took the 20 days.
Right, they got her for failure to supervise.
Yeah, which is a catch-all for everything.
I'd like to remind everybody, if you have a question or comment or a story you'd like to share, join the conversation by calling the podcast studio toll-free at 888-511-COPS, 888-511-2677. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Dean, and we'll see you shortly.
I surrender.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
Why do you ask that, kiddo?
Can I play with it?
No, absolutely not. It's not a toy. You know that.
Do I? I bet it looks like one.
Yeah, well, it's not. Anyway, I need it to protect you, your sister and Mom.
From what?
From bad guys, like on TV.
But what about the 8 kids who get shot every day by mistake? Their daddies probably thought they were safe too.
Where'd you hear that?
TV.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't believe everything we hear on TV.
Where do you keep it?
It's hidden.
I bet it's on the top shelf of the closet, under your sweatshirts. Is it loaded?
It's not. I keep the
In
bullets.
the boots with the red laces, in the chest beside the bed? I haven't found them yet, but I'm sure I can. You always told me to be curious. Remember when I found my Christmas gift? I'm a good climber, you know.
No, that's not what I meant. Look, I need to be ready if someone breaks in.
What about when it's just me and Mom? You taught me to be brave. I could use the gun to protect her.
No, Justin, I promise. I'll teach you how to handle a gun when you're old enough.
And what if I don't make it to old enough? I could get bullied and decide it's too much for me. It would be so easy with our gun.
Our gun? No, buddy. My gun.
But it is our gun, in our home. Happens all the time.
I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I'm always here for you.
But Dad, you're not always here.
Today with seasonal temperatures, we should reach our normal high of about 82 degrees by this afternoon. Clear skies tonight with a low near 70. Increasing cloudiness tomorrow, sticky and humid with a high of 36. With the winds up to the east.
And welcome back to Comservations. I'm here with my guest, Dean Swade, highly decorated New York City police officer. Dean, this is our sixth show, and we're still working out the kinks.
I think you're doing great.
You know, we have a little rough periods, a little shaky in the beginning of this episode. I think it's calmed down a little bit. You know, we've been talking about the attacks on police officers, how it's gotten out of hand. Barr, the Attorney General, was on the news saying that it's almost it's out of control. These attacks on police officers are happening all over. It's not specific to any city or state, but it's throughout the states. And I don't know if people see it on the news, and it's just spreading like wildfire.
It's horrible.
Yeah, and touched on the police suicides. New York experienced 9.
Yeah, that's a high number. It's so sad. I hate to hear that.
It's sad. I believe there have been 114 suicides nationwide to date, and I believe there are only 73 line of duty. You know, only. When you say only, one is too many.
That's right. One is too many.
There are 73 line of duty deaths. Really got to be. Guys need to seek help. They need to open up. They need to speak to people.
Yeah, you just know how cops are in general. That people come to the police for help, so the cops are hesitant to ask for help for themselves. And I think this is why Papa had started, because it's cops talking to other cops.
Right.
And who understands what cops go through more than another cop? So that's when I would talk to people on the phone, the guys that I went and met with and stuff. I understand kind of what their issues were, not from their side, but from my perspective, and I could understand about how it related to police work, and to get them the help that they need. And thank God that the incidents that I were involved in, they all worked out well.
Right.
you got to take the first step. Got to make the call.
Absolutely, you know, and I've touched on this before with other guests, with the suicides and the depression. Police, you know, years ago, if you admitted that you had a problem, there was something going on, the first thing they did was take your guns away.
Oh yeah, you'd be rubber gunned, which they would modify you, and nobody want to be modified or restricted duty, and you know, everybody who, you know, they call them the rubber gun guys. That you knew that there was something going on with them, you know.
The rubber gun squad. Yep.
Yeah, and you know, even like me, when I was on restricted duty, you know, they transferred me to the pound for one day, and for people who would be sent there, it was sort of like a punishment. You know, I got transferred back in one day because I was a good guy. They took care of me, and when I was on my restricted duty, I worked, you know, in my building. So I had it easy, but yeah, it's looked as a punishment. So people don't want to. They don't want to do that. They don't want to reach out because the job will just cover themselves. But that's when Papa came. I think it saved a lot of people because people would come through and they didn't need to have their guns taken away. They just had problems they couldn't deal with, you know.
Right, and the confidentiality was a big part of it.
Yeah, that was a big part of it.
You know, last week we talked about scams in an attempt to educate people. So hopefully the public won't become victim to scams. Tonight we're going to touch on a few more scams. But before I do, I want to remind everybody that if you'd like to call in, you can reach us toll-free at 888-511-COPS. There's a new twist to the grandparent scam. The grandparent scam, the way it works is they'll make a phone call, and usually to an elderly person, and they'll say, if it's a man or woman, they'll say grandma or grandpa, and a lot of times the elderly will ask, is this Dean? Yes. It's Dean. I'm in trouble.
They're answering their question.
Correct. They're giving a name. They're feeding it to him. You know, yes, this is Dean. I've been in a car accident, or I've been arrested. I need help. You have to send me money. And being a grandparent, you know, what do you want to do? You want to help.
Yeah, they want to do the right thing. You get a little confused. You might be older, and yeah, I could see where it could easily happen.
Absolutely, you know, in a way that they would get the funds, taking the instructions, you know, say, you know, send me Western Union. I need $1,000. Send me Western Union.
That's a red flag now because people have learned that anything Western Union, once it goes one way, you're not getting it back.
Right, it's not coming back. Or another thing they'll do is gift cards.
Gift cards, yeah, too. Even, you know, even recently too, I wanted one time to buy a whole bunch of gift cards, and they question it. They want to know what you're doing with them, because they think that if you're paying for it with a card, that something's wrong with the card because you're trying to get gift cards. Yeah. So everything is scrutinized now.
Yeah, and what they're doing now is a lot of these people are also saying, you know, Grandma, Grandpa, you need to send cash.
Yeah.
Know? And it has to be in, you know, 3 different envelopes, or put it in a magazine and hide it in between the pages, you know, so... And unfortunately, for the love of a grandchild, people are doing it.
Absolutely.
You know, so what we need people to do is, if you're listening to this show, and educate your family members, let them know what's going on. That these are scams that are out there.
Yeah, you know, pertinent information like Social Security numbers and bank account numbers. You know, never give them out. You know, the people will ask you for it. Let me, you know, say they're from a bank and verify this and verify that. They, you know, your full name, a date of birth. Yeah, they want to get info from you. Don't give them anything.
Sure, and what the grandparent has to do is, you know, call them back.
Absolutely.
Say, I'll call you right back on your phone. You know, and if there's some excuse, well, I don't have my phone. It's a scam. It really is a scam. So you got to be really careful with that. Another popular scam is the overpayment scam, and people are selling things on OfferUp or Craigslist, and they'll sell an item for, let's say, $200, and the person who's buying it will send them a check for $300, and ask them to either, you know, keep $50 for yourself for the trouble and just send me back the money. And this happens all the time. It's the overpayment scam.
Yeah, can I tell the story? You want to hear my story?
You can. Let me just finish this one. And you know, this usually happens to the classifieds. You know, the scam will give you a generous amount, make the payment through credit card or check, and like I said, you know, more than the agreed price, and have you send it back. You know, with an apology. You know, they'll apologize for giving you too much money and make some type of excuse, whatever. But yeah, go ahead. You personally experienced
my
this.
personal experience. So I was selling a boat, and I think it was when I first moved down here in like the year 2000, and I had my boat on all of these sites. It was a Zodiac boat, and I was asking, I think, $6,000 for the boat and a trailer, and somebody sent me a money order for $10,000 and said, well, the rest is going to be to ship it to them in England or something like that. It was like overseas. And I said, this whole thing doesn't sound good. And I was very leery about it. I actually went to the bank with this California money order, and I said, listen, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't think that this is good. I think I'm being scammed. And they made a phone call, and I says, no, it's good. You know, everything checks out. And they gave me $10,000 cash right there, right in the bank. So I went home and I said, I still don't feel right about this. It doesn't seem legit. And I called a friend of mine who was former law enforcement, used to work with bank security, and he told me, listen, I'll tell you right now, that's going to come back stolen, a stolen certified check when they used to be able to do it. Now I'm sure everything is more scrutinized, but so I actually went back to the bank with the $10,000 and said, listen, I know this is it's not a good certified check. And it did come back bad, and then I started to get emails threatening me, saying it's better send the boat or our money back. And, of course, they wanted me to Western Union back $2,000 to them, and nothing ever had happened of it. And everybody was happy, but the bank had called me very happy that I was able to give them the money back. And I said, well, I want to be able to sleep at night. $10,000 is not going to change my life. So
exactly, and usually what will happen is the scammer will pay with a stolen credit card that hasn't been reported yet.
Yeah. Now I think things are a lot harder, but this is when they were first starting these stolen money order things, because there was like a 3-day delay. So if they got it done right away, it was eking through in those days. But now I think it's a lot different, and plus there's been tried so many times that I don't know if anybody would accept anything with a certified check from another state.
No, it's crazy. And hang on, we've got another caller on the line, and let's pick him up. Hello, John, you're on the air.
Hey, Rob, it's John. Hey, Dean, how are you?
Very good. Hi, John.
Hey, Rob, Dean's almost, I think he's probably a better guest than Richie was a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Hey, but anyway, seriously, I just found out something else about gift cards today that I wasn't aware of, because I'm working a case now, and when you buy these gift cards, always make sure that the back of the container or whatever it is the gift card comes in is intact, and make sure nothing is tampered with, because I guess what happens is somehow they copy down the numbers, or they skim the number right from the card before it's purchased, and in the future down the line they're able to actually monitor the cards and see when dollars are put on them, or when they're purchased, and then you go to use them and they're notified, and then within hours or the next day the cards are actually emptied and zeroed out by being used at other places. So that was something I didn't know today, and I don't know if you guys were aware of that as well.
No, that's new on me. So pretty much they're getting the code from the back of the card.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason being, I had got this case, and the lady used it where I work, at the airport, and she swore up and down that it was skimmed there, and I could find nothing to say that it was skimmed there, but through the investigation, that's what I learned. And I just purchased 2 gift cards last week and didn't even realize that, and went out and looked at the backs to make sure they weren't tampered with. When I bought them, I never knew that. So that's something else to, be aware of when you buy these gift cards.
Yeah, I think on certain gift cards, there are numbers on the back where you have to give them to activate them, to use them. Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And somehow they're monitoring them, so they know when the gift card is purchased and, there's money and available on the gift card, and they wait till it's used one time, and then they somehow use that number at a store. The case I had was involved in 2 purchases at 2 separate Publix nowhere near the airport. So You know, it's all kinds of scams. You can't. You try to stay one step ahead of these people, and it's like trying to cut off the arms of an octopus. They just keep growing back.
No, they're always, unfortunately, they're always one step ahead. But something like that sounds like it's definitely got to be from inside, that an employee knows what gift cards are going out, and they're getting the numbers somehow. And I guess the cards have the number on the back where you can call up and keep track of the balance. So once you have that card number,
yeah, and I think some of these gift cards are even rechargeable. You know, people, you could link your bank account to it, just keep,
prepaid.
Yeah, and just keep putting money on that. So if they had access to that number, they might be able to just keep withdrawing off that card.
Yeah, you know.
Go ahead, Rob. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, unfortunately, nobody's immune to this. You know, my son was the victim of the overpayment scam as well years ago. Obviously, he didn't tell me anything about it until after the fact, when the check cashing place was coming after him for $240. You know, the same thing. He was selling something online, and there was an overpayment, and he went to the check cashing place, cashed it, they gave him the money back, and a few days later they got in touch with him and said, hey, this check is no good. And naturally, he had already spent the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
now it's to the point, if you're going to sell something online, you say, meet me somewhere and cash in hand.
Yeah, absolutely. John, thank you very much for calling. I appreciate you calling in.
See you soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
I'll be able to come back sometime. And Dean, thank you for your service.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Anytime you want, John, you have an open invitation. Okay.
Thanks. See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, another popular scam is the government grant scam. What they do is they try to get you money by guaranteeing a free grant to help you pay for college, home repairs, or other expenses. And what they do is they ask for your checking account information so they can deposit the money into your account or withdraw it at a one-time processing fee. In reality, the government rarely grants money to individuals. It's generally awarded to state, local governments, universities, or other organizations to pay for research and projects that benefit the public. So I advise, if you think you've been the victim of a government scam, report it to the Federal Trade Commission. You can file a complaint with the FTC online or call toll-free at 1-877-FTC-HELP. If you've paid a fee to learn about or apply for a government grant, you can report it to your state Consumer Protection Office. The government does not charge for information for applications for federal grants. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll probably wrap things up. We've had a great night. It's flown by.
Awesome.
So, all right, we're going to take a quick break, and if you'd like to call us, give us a call, 888-511-COPS. That's 888-511-COPS. And we will be back shortly.
Are your children in the right car seat for their age and size? Is the seat supposed to be forward-facing or rear-facing? Did they move to a booster seat too soon? It may be too late to check when you're on the road. Fortunately, you're on the couch. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Don't think you know. Know you know.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right.
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him. Hi. I'm a warning sign. I let people know when they're... Oh, gotta go.
I'll be right back.
Hi.
Hey, welcome back to Copservations. It's about time to wrap things up. And as we do always at the end of every episode, we want to honor the lives of our fallen brothers and sisters. But before that, I want to let you know, if you or someone you know would like to appear as a guest on the show, you can book your appearance on the Copservations Facebook page, or you can email the show directly at copservations@yahoo.com. The podcast studio is the newest addition here at Broadcast Beat Studios and is available for rental. So if you or someone you know are interested in broadcasting your podcast, give Broadcast Beat Studios a call at 954-363-2908. Okay. Tonight, we honor Deputy Chief Gary Martin and Lieutenant Gary Dudley of the Indiana State Police, whose end of watch was on this day, August 22nd, in 2006. Deputy Chief Martin and Lieutenant Dudley were struck and killed while participating in a charity bicycle ride for the India chapter of Concerns of Police Survivors. Both officers were riding with 7 other active and retired officers, one civilian survivor on the 13th day, 1,058-mile bike ride. Martin and Dudley were riding southbound on State Road 63, about 2 miles south of Interstate 74 near Prairiesville, when the driver of a freight truck rear-ended their support van, forcing it into the group of riders. The support van had a large banner warning the cyclist and was using flashing amber lights at the time of the collision. Deputy Chief Martin and Lieutenant Dudley died at the scene. One of the other cyclists in both vehicles, the driver, was injured. Deputy Chief Martin had served with the Lake County Sheriff's Department for over 3.5 years. He had previously served with the Gary Police Department for 25 years and was a U.S. veteran. Deputy Chief Martin was survived by his wife, a son who serves as a sergeant with the Gary Police Department, and daughter, 3 sisters and 2 brothers, one who serves as a reserve sergeant with the Mount Juliet, Tennessee Police Department. His brother-in-law, Lieutenant Thurman E. Sharp of the Marion County Sheriff's Department, was killed in the line of duty on December 25, 1988. Lieutenant Dudley had served with the Indiana State Police for over 26.5 years and was assigned to the Training Division. Since 2005, he had been the commander of the Indian State Police Recruit Academy. He began his career assigned to the Lowell Post and was twice awarded the Life Saving Award, in 1989 and in 1992. Lieutenant Dudley was survived by his wife, father, and brother. In 2007, State Road 63 from State Road 32 to Interstate 74 in Vermilion County was dedicated the Gary E. Dudley and Gary L. Martin Memorial Highway in their honor. And on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Dean, I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing your stories with us.
You're very welcome.
And I'd love to have you back at another time. We can continue this conversation.
Absolutely. We'd love to do that.
Okay, thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, stay safe and God bless.